You're listening to the ESU Visiting Writers Series.
I'm Kevin Ravis, and I'm here with past Poet Laureate of Kansas, Huascar Medina, who is also a National Endowment of the Arts Council member. Tell me a little bit about not only being a poet, but an artistic advocate in our state and beyond.
Oh, being an advocate, I think, is important. I think anyone who's in the creative field, I think they are advocates if they're out there doing creative work in community, if they're binding community with their work, if they're talking about hard subjects in their community. I think that's advocating when you can show the utility of art, whatever medium you choose. Mine happens to be poetry, so I talk about the importance of it, of having artists at the table, all tables, any conversation, whether it has to do with rural water, urban runoff, poverty, housing. I think poets have an incredible gift to take complex issues and simplify them in a way that is elegant, is the word I would use. And I find that to be something I'm good at, kind of synthesizing like large amounts of information and data and talking about it in a very easy way. I don't like the word simple. Sometimes the word simple can be spoken of as dumbing something down, but that's not what I'm doing when I'm talking about things. I'm simply trying to be as clear as possible, because I truly believe clarity is kindness, and I want to do work that way, and I want to do good work, and I want to be a good egg in community. And I think that's part of advocacy, showing up, putting your best foot forward, being professional with your craft in community, and showing the usefulness that your work can have to your community, that it adds to your community. I think that's part of the advocacy work. I mean, I also talk about artists and paying artists all the time, right? Paying them more, it's always a conversation I have. That's part of the advocacy work as well. But it's primarily just being in community as an artist, being seen as an artist in community. Writers are artists. Sometimes they separate us, musicians, performing artists and all that, but we're all doing creative work. It's all important. It all matters to the community, and it can all be helpful and beneficial to everyone, those who experience it and those who are in the process of creating it.
Right. I so admired your term as Poet Laureate of Kansas, and you were a number of firsts, as we talked about in class today. First Latino Poet Laureate of Kansas, first spoken word poet of Kansas, among other different kinds of poetry. Tell me a little bit about what it was like being Poet Laureate of Kansas.
It's a blessing. What a privilege to be able to travel to the state of Kansas, have doors opened with a title, right? Mm-hmm. No longer have to knock as hard. Sometimes people are inviting you. Just a very interesting experience to have people invite you to go read places, when most of my reading experiences, the spoken word circuit, you're going out there and you're competing in other communities to try to win. You're vying, for a position. And this one was bestowed upon me by an organization who thought that my work was of a caliber that was worth sharing with the community on a large scale, and they were willing to fund that. And having that additional assistance to be able to travel, to be able to go into communities, to show the importance of poetry, to, as Humanities Kansas said, that movement of ideas is very important, and to be someone to share my ideas in other communities where people like me, I don't believe, are often heard or moved into those positions of I like to say prestige creatively. I think it's a high position to hold, and it comes with a responsibility as well in community. And I loved it. I loved every opportunity I had to speak with someone, whether we agreed or disagreed. I think the moments that we disagreed were the moments I was looking for when I was out in those communities talking about my work. A lot of my work talked about the isolation I feel, second generation immigrant growing up in the United States, moving to a new place, the difficulty I had acclimating to even just the weather here. There's a lot of change, culture shock that came with moving here. And if I could share that work with individuals who've also had that experience and give voice to it in a personal but also general way, that others can attach some of their experience to, I felt was a win whenever I was in community. The conversations after the reading, where someone would sit and talk to me for 10, 15 minutes about what it's like living where they lived, I think they just needed to be heard. And I provided a space for that, right? That permission structure of coming into that community and sharing that way and being vulnerable. So it's just constant building the scaffolding of conversation in those spaces. And I was just very blessed to have the title, to be taken serious as an artist, as a poet in those spaces. And I did the best I could to try to elevate the position and also maintain the caliber of professionalism that you yourself brought to the position, Kevin. When you were touring as well, sharing poetry. I didn't play drums, but I got out there and I did my best. So.
Oh, you were wonderful, and I mark it as one of the privileges of my life to play drums behind you a few times while you read. Oh man, I appreciate that. It boosts me up. Having that extra push there as well. Serious musicians, serious poets. What else do you want? Right? Yeah. So it's a great space to be in. How often do we get that opportunity to just share, just be creative, to just explore, right? To discover, to nail something down, for a little bit. That's beautiful to me. Yeah. One of the most beautiful things I think I've ever heard when it comes to a preface to a poem is your poem about the frog or toad that only lives on a certain island. And I thought of how you use that metaphor for the immigrant story. Would you mind recounting some of that? Yes. The poem, I think, I referenced it in a couple poems. The coquille is a frog in Puerto Rico that's well known, has a very particular sound that you hear regularly. It's in the air all the time. If you're in Puerto Rico, you can hear it at night. It's a lullaby. You hear it asleep. And there's like phones that play that sound, so you could hear it when you're away, because you get so homesick when you don't hear it, when you've heard it every day of your life when you've been there. The coquille is a small frog that they believe that if that frog leaves the island, that it will perish. And that's attached to like older folklore with the island and at the bay, and removing children from their parents. And if they cried, they would turn into frogs. Was the original story there, right? So I imagine what it would be like to be taken away from your motherland or your fatherland. Like that, to me, that was the extension of that story. That was that metaphor extending further out from, and do you cry in that instance, or do you sing like the coquille? Like, what is the choice? What are you going to do in that moment? And for me, I chose, there was crying, right? When you're away from family and stuff. But there's also an opportunity to sing there as well, to bring the island to other places, to bring that island of enchantment, that paradise to other places, to carry that with you. It's something I carry with me. It's that sound. It's always there. It's similar to crickets, but it's not, right? They come at very particular times, temperature changes and that, but the coquilles are consistent, man. They're always there. You hear them every day. And you miss those sounds that play in the background all the time. It's like the score to your life. That's so beautiful. Today we spent a good deal of time talking to young poets. Do you have any advice or inspiration for either young poets or poets at any stage in their creative life? Don't compare. Don't ever compare yourself to other poets. You know where you're at. You know where you want to go. You know what you want to write. If you don't, go find it. And the only way to find that is to write. Because writing is the discovery. But that's chipping away. It's building something, but it's also digging away at something. It's exploring, sifting through moments and emotions and time. And you got to be open to the possibility that what you set out to discover may not be what you end up finding. And that mystery, that owning that mystery in your writing, makes it magical. And if you can have that constant discovery in your work, it'll never get old. You'll want to do it forever. But you got to be open to it. If you set out with a very formulaic way of, this is what I want to write today, there's a place for that. But that can get old really quick. That becomes very, very repetitive. And you can put blinders on your work, on your craft, on your visibility of things.
sometimes you got to back away from that and say, I'm just going to let the work take me where it takes me. And I'm willing to go on that journey. And we got to allow space for that as writers. Everything is so driven by project or deadline. Sometimes it's okay to write just for the sake of writing. You know, writing should be part of our daily lives, the way talking is. You know, we should be able to share that without any need for monetary gain. We should be able to write to each other. Write letters to each other. I appreciate the letters you've written to me, Kevin. Letters I write to family that I receive from family. Like those things are special, and those are things I would never sell, right? But they have so much worth and value to me. And I want my writing to kind of have that kind of energy as well. So you gotta write both.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Any parting words for our podcast today?
Expectation will rob you of joy. That's it. Live in the moment. Be present with your work. And be humble to it.
Well, thank you, my brother poet.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you.
Likewise.